room here where we have Senator Joanne Brown, joined by Minority Leader Senator Chris Duenas. Good morning, Senators.
Good morning, Chris.
Morning, Senator Joanne. I wanted to kind of
Hi,
start.
good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good. We're good. Busy show. I wanted to start with this news of Jack Hattig, the Chamorro Land Trust Administrator, because Senator Joanne, I know you had written a letter to the governor asking her to investigate Mr. Hattig and the allegations that had come from a land agent that he had coerced her into doing something that violated the Chamorro Land Trust rules and regs. Of course, just timeline on this. The Land Trust Commission had addressed those allegations in executive session. There was a continuation of that executive session, which the board had come out of and announced that they felt Jack Hattig was not suited for the job. And that they were going to meet with the governor. And so that meeting happened last Monday between the chair, Juan Regis Jr., and the governor. We didn't hear anything for a week. In fact, yesterday I was just thinking, like, God, they had a whole closed door meeting and nobody knows a darn thing, which was suspect. But then we got the news late yesterday afternoon that Jack Hattig submitted his resignation to the governor. There was no reason given. I know that as of press time yesterday, the chair of the Land Trust Commission, John Reyes Jr., had not received a copy of it. Anyway, just what do you make of this resignation and the fact that it's not really a resignation because while he may not be at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, they found a place for him at Adelup as a special assistant. Is that accountability?
Well, obviously. Well, I leave that up to the people to decide. I mean, our main concern was ensuring that the activities and operations of the Chamorro Land Trust were above board and that it was free of corruption. And when the land agent came forth and raised those concerns about her particular report being altered by Mr. Haddock and having to bring those issues forth. And then, of course, the initial response we heard back from the commission leadership was that, they've worked those issues out, so to speak. And the main concern I had was forgery of these documents. I mean, if Mr. Haddock in his capacity as a director wanted to have his own input, he certainly could have clarified that in a separate document and said, these are my recommendations. And then the commission, I'm sure, can evaluate it from there. But to have the work product of the land agent, which is, listed in their name, being presented, and then the land agent coming forth and saying, oh, no, my original report has been altered and the recommendation is contrary to what's allowed by law. Obviously, that's a concern. And I think it shows to just an also bigger issue with the Chamorro Land Trust over the years, as we've known. There's a lot of procedures and policies that not have been followed. I mean, there's been a lot of issues about who's been getting land. I mean, we have people that were able to order their share of Chamorro Land Trust land adjacent to their private property so they could expand their private property. We've had people jump ahead of those that, stood in line for hours, back in the early 1990s to be able to even get on the list. We've had legitimate people that are deserving of land trust property that all these years later are still waiting.
We also
and so
had
we have the lack of confidence. That's the concern.
I just got to throw this. We also had a former sitting senator who was able to, against the rules and the regulations, receive a lease from her mom up at Barragata Heights, but that was all undone. Yeah, so there was definitely so much hanky-panky going on at Chamorro Land Trust. I mean, I used the past tense there, but apparently it was still going on as recently as a few weeks ago, according to this land agent.
Well, and I think we need to address that. I mean, if the legislature has to intercede and actually outline the process through law so there's no deviation, then perhaps that's what we need to do to ensure that the proper procedures are being followed by the Land Trust Commission. I mean, I know the previous chairwoman, Pika Farron, brought up a number of issues to try to correct and get the Chamorro Land Trust operations on track. And I think her efforts are very much appreciated. But we also have to ensure it's not just a question of this current commission, it's the past commissions, and it's also, more importantly, the future commissions that oversee these very valuable assets that are intended to be given to our people. But when you see activities like this, where these issues are raised, I mean, I guess the administration's chosen to take a very quiet stance, and hopefully, by next week, there'll be another issue and it'll fade away. But it just shows that, these documents were forged. I had several weeks ago, had sent a FOIA to the current chairman, Mr. Regis, requesting all documents from that board meeting in February to include the original agent reports, because I'm not sure if this is something just limited to the single report that was raised by that land agent, or are there other reports? When they sent me the documents, I also requested everything from FY 2020. And when they sent me the documents, there were only a single set of agent reports. And I believe that there are original agent reports that were forwarded to the director and have since been changed. And I just got a letter this morning informing me that they have no further documents concerning my request. And that concerns me, because I actually do believe that there are other original agent reports that exist that may have been changed. And I think that issue needs to be brought to light. I mean, I'm very concerned about this. If this sort of thing is what's happening, and this is what officially the Chamorro Land Trust is putting on record, particularly if we believe that there are other original documents that were put together under the names of these land agents and forwarded to the commission and have since been changed. And so I definitely have a concern about that, and will continue to pursue that issue. And if necessary, you know, I like I said, I'm only a member of one committee in this legislature, and that's Speaker Therese Terlahi's committee. And if necessary, I think we need to call an oversight and bring these issues to light so that they can be properly addressed, and more importantly, properly corrected in the interests of our people. But this type of corruption that has been going on, and misuse of this land that was intended for our people, it's not acceptable moving forward to continue to see this sort of thing happening. I think even more so, I'm sure our people are disgusted by seeing this happen, especially those that have been waiting so many years. Before, they were waiting hopefully for themselves, you know, be what their interest to want to farm or build a home. Now they're calling and saying, gosh, you know, can I have something to share with my grandchildren and spend time with my grandchildren? Because that much time has passed in their lives, and it's even beyond them now. They're looking for the future of their children and their grandchildren. So I think we should have a higher expectation, and it's unfortunate that this has happened. But we need to do a lot more to get things back on track so that we can reduce and minimize this type of corruption that's been happening at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission.
All right, let's get into it. Senator Duenas, I know you had asked to come on because you wanted to explain your opposition to clean drinking water. And this resolution that had come out from Senator Sabina Perez. I had her on yesterday. Let's just kind of go into it, because it was a resolution that was kind of in line with the observance of World Clean Water Day or something like that. But you guys, I don't know if it's you specifically, I do know Senator Brown had brought up issues about the anti-military, what you guys had said was the anti-military tone of the resolution. Go ahead, Senator.
Good morning, Chris and Bree and Jason, and thank you for the opportunity. Absolutely not, Chris. Senator Joanne Brown and I are not against clean drinking water. In fact, we've advocated our entire careers for clean drinking water and other things for the people of Guam. Chris, this is one of those times when you have a piece of legislation that should have probably been sent back to the author anyways, where the title does not match the content of the bill, of the resolution that's been put in play. Chris, this very clearly, as you go through the resolution, what it points to is the military and its firing range and the non-compatibility of the firing range, and probably we should shut down the military buildup. The author never once went against those arguments on the floor. Other members of her party tried to say that on the floor, that it was only about clean drinking water, but she never stopped when myself, Senator Brown, Senator Frank Blas Jr. made the case that if we are going to talk about clean drinking water, let's go to places that KUM has already gone to: Gil Baza, Gil Breeze, Chamorro Land Trust properties. I mentioned yesterday on another program, I made my single most largest investment of my life in 2002 when I built a home in Afami. And I was on radio stations and the news holding up a glass of what I called miso soup, because the Tsaut pump station was so contaminated by cross-contamination from sewage getting into the water lines that people and residents of Afami, Tsaut, and Sinahanya were being basically had fecal chloroform and poison in their water. They had to chlorinate the water so hard that it smelled like Clorox sometimes when I would open up my faucet. I would see trucks from going to the pump stations up in Afami and the Tsaut area with bottles and bottles of chlorine that they were constantly offloading so that they could keep the water clean. Chris, we are responsible for our own water as well. And to present a resolution that only the firing range potentially may cause problems with the aquifer, I have a problem with that.
Right, but I feel like in what you're saying, it's almost ironic because you're calling out the author of the resolution for only looking at contamination, or, well, from what I'm getting, what you're saying, only looking at contamination with the buildup, whereas you are saying we should only look at contamination that's not related to the buildup?
No, absolutely not, Chris. What I'm saying is to look at it holistically. Look at it to include us on the opposite side of the fence. Let's talk about every aspect of making sure that we have clean water for the people of Guam. And also, when a resolution has far-reaching implications, where it basically says the firing range may be a showstopper with regard to the military buildup, that needs a larger discussion than just one public hearing. That's why I asked for the resolution to go back to committee so we can and off the base with regard to issues with regard to contamination of our aquifer, bring in waterworks, bring in so many other people, because this is a bigger conversation. But if the author is going to once again be clear that the firing range is a showstopper and we can't do the military buildup, that has implications for the entire people of Guam and those who are relying on the military buildup for their livelihood. And that is a far-reaching, serious discussion that deserves more than just an up and down vote on a resolution on the floor.
Right. Because I did read the resolution, and I said yesterday that I could see it was kind of like pieced together from some of it because the information is not new. And again, this is a lot of it is the Department of Defense's very own information that they're putting out. So when you have the federal government themselves through all these studies and data releases, and I mean, even something like those 7 million bullets being shot over the aquifer, I mean, how can you not be concerned about those issues? And how do you classify it as anti-military when it's the federal government themselves that are coming out with a lot of this information that's contained in the resolution?
So I applaud the federal government for being straightforward and putting in the report and the SCIS supplemental report saying the potential of, just like they have now come out and said that they have a state-of-the-art drainage system from the runway now that they had to employ because the current aircraft and sophisticated aircraft that are landing up there at Anderson now required less than a certain mil of water on the runway. They have now rolled out the fact that they've taken every potential contamination as that runoff is now being caught and the crown has been put on that airway, that the water going back down to the aquifer is clean because they have state-of-the-art abilities to take out the contaminants. By the way, the report says the potential of. We have a potential of dying in a plane crash when we get on an airplane. I have the potential as I leave my office this morning and getting in a car accident and being killed by being run over by a semi. There's a lot of potential, but I think the mitigating efforts that the federal government and the military has put in place far outweigh anything we're even doing on the outside of the fence to mitigate issues of contamination of our waterlands.
Let's get on Senator Joanne Brown, because I believe, Senator, it was your comments on the floor where you had called this resolution out for what you believe, or I think it was you said could be interpreted as anti-military.
Well, very much so. I mean, certainly we're hardly in a position to be accused of being anti-safe drinking water. I mean, certainly in my case, I know Senator Chris's case. I mean, I've been, most of my government career has been focused on how to address and protect safe drinking water. I mean, I've been an advocate of that for many years. I was a deputy at Guam EPA in 1992 when we were involved with the negotiations with the military to put Anderson Air Force Base on the national priorities listing. I spent 14 years as a community member of the Restoration Advisory Board. I was the very first co-chair for Anderson Air Force Base to address the review and oversight and prioritization of sites on and off base that were contaminated by the military, to either address total cleanup or mitigation where necessary, or where the technology provided for that. So I have no issue with regards. I certainly, and Senator Chris and all of us, are very much for safe drinking water. But in this particular resolution, I mean, the first page and a half addresses that, and then it totally diverges into what is an issue with regards to the firing range and related concerns. And we're not saying those issues aren't important, but we definitely believe those issues should be separated. Safe drinking water is one discussion, and if that's the title, is the title of the resolution all focused on, safe drinking water for World Water Day 2021. And recognizing the importance of protecting our Northern Guam aquifer and precious water resources and ensuring the health of our people. That's the title of the resolution. The contents of the resolution tell you a different story. And certainly if we want to debate the issue of the military buildup, then let's have a resolution on the military buildup. And let's have that discussion. We're not in any way trying to condone any of the bad practices that have happened with regards to military in terms of any dumping. I mean, the whole issue of environmental protection didn't even arrive formally until the early 1970s. And certainly here on Guam EPA was not created till 1973. So there are a lot of sins of the past that need to be addressed. But moving forward, we also need to acknowledge a lot of steps have actually been taken to address those cleanups, and that why it was very important for Anderson to be placed on the national priorities listing, and what steps and all the amount of money, time, and effort that's been invested in cleanup. But when we want to just point the finger one way and blame the military, and yet ourselves and so many practices that are happening outside the gate, as Senator Chris had elaborated on. And more importantly, I have to say this, as I said on the floor, this government has almost appropriated such a minuscule amount of money. While we talk often about how important our natural resources are, we invest so little. The majority of Guam EPA hasn't changed since I left and when I started there back in 1991. The amount of staff capacity is barely another 1 or 2 or 3 people now that have been added on in the past 30 years to the staffing of Guam EPA. And most of Guam EPA is paid for by federal funds. It's not by local funds that pay for the majority of the operations and what fees they get back that they charge. But overall, environmental protection on Guam is actually paid for by the federal government. And I think we should be ashamed about that. So I certainly expect all my colleagues that are such advocates and so anti-military, perhaps, in their view of these issues, to want to reinvest some of their money, put their money where their mouth is, and start investing in environmental protection for this community. Because contrary to the view that Guam EPA is not involved or not aware, or simply because it's behind the base, the military is a lot more sensitive to these issues and the criticisms that they can get by not addressing these environmental issues in the construction of their projects, and also going back and addressing the mitigation of previous dump sites that they've created. So I think in all fairness, these issues should have been separated. If we want to talk about safe drinking water, let's talk about safe drinking water. If we want to talk about the military buildup and a resolution with regards to that, then by all means, let's put a resolution forth and have that discussion. But to combine the issue and essentially militarize this whole discussion with regards to safe drinking water and make this an anti-military resolution, I certainly, as a member of the legislature, have a problem with that.
But I mean, don't you think that any conversation about clean drinking water should include what's happening up at the buildup, because it will have an impact on clean drinking water? I don't see them entirely as totally separate.
Well, when you put a resolution and that's all you talk about, and you don't talk about what's happening in your own front and backyard that's contributing to the degradation of our waterlands, then you're not having a fair discussion, because there are a lot of activities that are happening that are unregulated, that continue to be unregulated by this government. I've been into the Hallam tunnels. I've seen these trenches that the military dug back in the day in the limestone, where they deposited all kinds of debris and chemicals. I've seen it firsthand. But I've also been into the Hallam tunnel and seen where a lot of junk cars, barrels that have unknown chemical substances of them, have been left out there to deteriorate and go into our waterlands. There is almost no regulation with regards to a lot of open septic tanks that are leaching into our waterlands. I mean, the list goes on. But yet while we profess to want to attack the military, and Chris, if we want to have the discussion about being pro-military and anti-military, that's again a different discussion, because there's a lot of people on Guam that are members of military families and not themselves serving.
But Senator, I mean, to be fair though, I think just like the term anti-military, I don't think it's anti-military to hold the military accountable for potential and past contamination. And I think that anybody who served in the military would agree. I mean, I know I got family members who served in the military, and just because they served in the military doesn't mean that they think the military should be able to do whatever they want to do on our soil. I mean, that's the reality
No,
of it.
Chris, but
I know, but
yeah,
Chris, I don't disagree with the point that you're making.
right.
But if you want to have a discussion with regards to these issues and contaminants and the military itself, let's have that discussion. But let's not put this under the guise of safe drinking water and project to our community that if you don't support this resolution, you don't support safe drinking water, because there's a lot of activities that are happening above our waterlands that are not only a threat now, but are going to be a growing threat to the future. Let's have that discussion separately, but to combine all this in a single resolution and then say, oh, if you don't support it, you're not for safe drinking water, and try, like I said, to politicize and this whole and militarize this issue under the guise of safe drinking water, I don't think that's appropriate. I've got no problem. I've invested more time than any member of the legislature overseeing cleanup of military contaminated sites on this island. So that's something I can speak to. I'm the senator that introduced the legislation that funded the hydrogeologic survey at Weary, so that we continue to profile and understand our waterlands and study our waterlands and have our students up there be able to get the expertise and degree in the field of hydrogeology so that they can be here to reinvest back in Guam and the region. So I've got no issue. I think no one here can argue that they're not for safe drinking water, but the context of how this has been put in this resolution with this very different title, I don't think it's right. I think it should be properly separated. And our people at least should be aware and understand of what's going on, because there's a lot of dynamics. There's a lot of issues with regards to military pro and con, and we're open to having those discussions. But when we're looking at passing a resolution and looking at sending it to the United Nations to send someone, a rapporteur out here to oversee these issues, then at least let's be upfront and honest with what exactly is going on across the board that's affecting safe drinking water, than simply using this as a vehicle to come out and attack the military and give the public impression that if you don't support this resolution, you don't support safe drinking water.
That's correct. I mean, and the therefore portion of it, it's to have this group of rapporteurs to come to Guam, from what I understand, a report to which has already been provided. They didn't do the research. They've already formulated opinion, and the United Nations is gonna tell the United States government that this is what they're doing on Guam. This is what we're calling for in this resolution. As Senator Brown noted once again, it calls on EPA to do its job. We call on EPA to do its job, and we've appropriated basically nothing. Maybe we buy them a truck once in a while or something like that from the Guam legislature, and give them absolutely nothing in terms of local resources to do this job. We asked them to review all these applications that are coming in for permitting and the like, and all of these have potential of damaging our waterlands, depending on what kind of application is coming in for a gas station, for something that's going to be dealing with chemicals, and they're supposed to turn that around in 30 days with the limited staff that they have. We're just not being fair when we turn around and laser focus. Yes, the military should be held accountable for what they're doing, but we're telling everybody else to do something that we're not doing ourselves at the legislature.
Senator Brown, I wanted to just bring up, because I know a lot of people who supported you because of your anti-corruption stance, but also because of your environmental work. I was Googling you last night with Save Southern Guam, and the work that you did with that organization to halt the development of high rises in Pago Bay. And I was just trying to reconcile, and I wanted to pose the question to you in my head, why you would have an issue with the high rise development, or, you know, you had issues, obviously, you know, issues with that, and you guys were able to successfully defeat that development. But what would you say to those people who look at your activism on that issue and look at your statements on this issue with the contamination and the potential contamination with the buildup?
Chris, my position on contamination has never changed. I mean, who I am and what I represent all these years, even when being environmentally friendly, it wasn't publicly acceptable, it wasn't popular, it wasn't the in thing that it is today. I'm still the same person. I still have the same concerns, and I'm no less concerned about the issues with regards to the buildup. That doesn't make me anti-buildup, doesn't make me anti-military, but I think it's important, certainly, that more information is forthcoming. There's various things that concern me. I mean, look at the issue with Pago Bay. Look at our ancestral remains that were excavated that 10 years later. It's only now because we're bringing up the issue that more attention is being placed, even though it was a condition of their permit to properly address the reburials of those ancient remains. They languished for 10 years and have not been addressed. I don't see it any differently as our ancestors that are coming from the properties that we're talking about in the construction of the new base. But a lot of information is not forthcoming. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we heard there was a burial up there of these ancestral remains, but if it happened this year, I'm sure Senator Chris and I and other members of the legislature, unless they knew about it and we didn't know about it, we would have certainly wanted to be there for that reburial. I'm certain a lot of our community organizations that advocate for this, if we couldn't get everybody there, certainly have representatives from those our local organizations present for those reburials. But a lot of this information has not been forthcoming, and it's not like our administration and our governor is not involved in these discussions. So certainly those things should be more forthcoming. So my position is no different on any of these projects. But with regards to this resolution, with regards to presenting one issue in the title, and yet the body represents something totally different, the fact that we're even having this discussion on a resolution that's titled about safe drinking water is really ironic. But I'm saying simply separate these issues. If you want to debate the military buildup, and that's what you want to present to the United Nations, and let's have a discussion on the military buildup. If we want to have a discussion on contamination, then let's have a discussion on contamination, because there's a whole number of factors that are contributing to the degradation of our northern Guam waterlands that we're so dependent upon for our, not just our economic development and all the things that come with that, but the basic existence of our lives here on this island and the future of our people on this island. So my positions are very consistent. I haven't changed who and what I am. I simply do not agree with combining these issues with a title that so misrepresents what the contents of the resolution actually state.
All righty,
yeah,
then.
Chris, and I've heard it mentioned a lot of times on this station by others who have had this position. We could chew gum and walk at the same time. Why would I have wanted to put the resolution back in committee for further hearings if I don't want to hear what the people have to say on both sides of the issue? But yet the same senators voted that down. Why don't you want to have a larger conversation about this issue? If I wanted to kill it, I would have said put it in the inactive file. But I didn't. I said, put it back in committee so we can hold more hearings and roundtables on this issue. This is not simply a firing range issue. And if that's an issue, I want to sit down and talk about it. And I'm not saying it's not an issue, but why wouldn't they at least vote to put it back in committee to further substantiate their position?
I know we got a state funeral this morning for
Yes,
former
we do.
Speaker
We
Joe
have to
T.
go.
Senator, let me just ask you the status on the official misconduct bill, because I saw that Senator Moylan has a bill where he's trying to redefine the legal definition of what is official misconduct. I don't know if you had eyes on that, but is that going to affect your measure that is...
Well, I haven't seen Senator Moylan's bill. I have to look it up. But as of last week, I understand they were awaiting 2 more signatures in committee. So I have been following up, and certainly today's not the day for me to ask the oversight chair, but I'm sure by next week I can appropriately approach him and find out the status, because the public hearing for that bill was over 2 months ago. And it's a very simple bill. It's not complicated. It's barely a page and a half. So I've seen many bills that have been far longer and most recently heard, and they're already on the agenda. So I definitely want to see that bill move forward. And if they're going to vote it up or down, let's make sure that bill sees the light of day as it should.
Right on. Well, thank you, Senator Duenas, Senator Brown, for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much as well.
Okay.
Thank
we'll
you,
see you guys.
Chris, and to the KUM team.
That's that.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We'll see you.
That's that. Bye-bye.
Oh, there you go. 9:38. Hey, I got to take a break, and we're coming back with Mark Scott of the Guam Guard next.